This is Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Happy Hump Day, Pacer Nation. Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, and I hope you all enjoyed our conversation on our last episode with Benedict Mathurin. If you have not listened to that episode yet, I highly recommend that you guys go back and listen to that. But Facci, we are here today to talk about Pacers Day 1 training camp and media day, since we didn't get a chance to talk about that because of our Mathurin interview. So how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, but there's just something about training camp, seeing the boys go at it, where it's really like, okay, yep, this is getting very real, very quickly, and just seeing the Pacers hit the court together makes it feel like basketball is inches away.
I always know that Pacers basketball season is around when you see October on the calendar, right? Like it's just you wake up and it just feels like fall is here, basketball is here, playoff baseball is here. It's an exciting time, right? So I know that we're all excited about that, but let's talk about Media Day because that happened Monday on September 30th. A lot of interesting things there. I was there for a lot of the player interviews and Carlisle's interviews, so I can kind of share my thoughts on things, but I'm curious, was there anything that stood out to you in some of the content you caught?
Not so much. I think with media day, when you're bringing back the same type of roster, there's not so much of like, oh my God, well, what's it going to be like with this player? There's no, big splashy acquisitions, or maybe like for the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm sure their media day is probably a lot different, but I feel like there was a couple words that were really tossed around a lot, like defense and the word fluke, where it's like, is this team for real? Can they, be the defensive team that we saw post All-Star break? I feel like a lot of those are valid questions, but I also just feel a little bit more confident with this team, the type of chemistry that they have, and what we could expect this upcoming year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tyrese was kind of the head of the snake in terms of saying they have that chip on their shoulder. Like everybody is calling their run to the Eastern Conference Finals a fluke. There were a lot of things that stood out to me, Facci, from a couple of different players. And I think since we're staying with Tyrese, two things that really stood out to me from Media Day was number one, the fact that he said not being a part of the rotation for Team USA was a bit of a humbling experience for him. And I think that's kind of one of those things where it's going to motivate him this upcoming season. Like you want to give a guy a reason to get motivated to play well. Like obviously had the injury last year, frustrating, couldn't finish out the series against the Celtics, couldn't prove, just how special he can be. Then everybody keeps calling their run to the Eastern Conference Finals a fluke. And then on top of that, he's on the roster but doesn't get a chance to play. So I think those are all things that are just kind of building up with him. And then lastly, one of the things that he really talked about, and Coach Carlisle hinted at this, was that he spent a lot of time with Steph Curry when he was with Team USA and had that experience. And Tyrese basically said, you know what, I had zero conversations with Steph besides like, hey, good game before I went there. But they got dinner a few times and they were hanging out together, and he was just kind of absorbing all that knowledge that Steph had for him, especially since they have a similar game in terms of very offensive minded and not necessarily the best defensive players, right? So how do you kind of have success when you're not the greatest defender offensively? You're more of a a threat out there. So I thought those were the two takeaways from me with Tyrese. And of course, I did have to ask him about WWE because who couldn't ask him about the Jalen Brunson stuff? But it was a lot of fun. I think that Tyrese is just a character. He was hamming it up. He actually came back to the media room after his initial interviews, and that's when I got my question in. So I appreciate Pacers PR for getting Tyrese back in there. But really, just some cool answers from Tyrese. We know this guy likes to talk a lot, but I thought he's had such a busy summer. It was good to hear him say those kind of things, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he kind of uses those things that he learned and some of that motivation to be better this season.
Yeah, it felt like this past year, he was just like the busiest man alive. He
Oh
just
yeah.
became an absolute star. And I feel like with that comes, like you said, appearances on WWE. I mean, you're with Team USA. He's everywhere. And I think that could be exhausting. But going back to your point about the motivation, this Pacers team, they love a good chip on the shoulder. It's like
Yep.
what we need. It's like if you gave this team too much praise, it probably would go to their head. And we just heard from Benedict Mathurin, he was on our show, talking about how he keeps those receipts. We heard from Tyrese Haliburton that, the Pacers are being doubted. He goes, I could show you the bookmarks. I'm like chronically online. He knows what's going on, what people are saying. And I just think that the team feeds off of that. So, hey, doubt us all you want. We've always been an underdog, and that's kind of where we thrive. So I like it. And then I think other than that, you just kind of heard just a little bit like Tyrese talked about just how close it was between teams, 2-8. It's like there's no time for a slump. Like you got to be able to get through things. And I just think that right now, this is a group that enjoys each other. They're bought in. It seems like a pretty tight knit group. And I would like to think that they could hit the ground running this year.
Absolutely. I want to go to Myles Turner now because obviously you're 10 for Myles. A lot of things Myles said. I felt personally like Myles was a little bit edgy in his interview. And I asked other people in the media room like what they thought, and they were like, "No, I didn't think so." And I was like, I don't know. There was just an added like energy to him. I think part of it is just like he's going into a contract year once again.
Yeah.
And he made the joke like when somebody asked him, like, hey, you're going into a contract year, what's that like? He's like, every year that I've been here, it's been a contract year,
Pretty
basically,
much.
with the fact that he's been in trade rumors so much. So I hope that wasn't the case last year, obviously, right? Because I'm pretty locked in. And I think for this year, it's a lot different just because there's nothing they can do with the contract.
Mhm.
So there's no extension possible at this point. So I would just put it in the back pocket and say, you know what? If he's not dealt by the trade deadline, I think we can just move past that conversation. But obviously, I don't think that's going to happen. I think this team is very strong on their continuity conversation. But in those conversations we had yesterday, Myles did say that he's added on 7 pounds of muscle, Facci, and said that he is now at 260 pounds. I'm not sure what Basketball Reference has had him listed at, but I think the fact that he is definitely making it a point of emphasis to get stronger, that is hopefully going to bode well for him this upcoming season, as he maybe hopes to be more of a physical presence down low. And I think me and you both would love to see that from him.
We absolutely would. I had to look up while you mentioned it on Basketball Reference. He's listed at 250. So,
Okay.
look, your weight could change by a little bit on any given day, but that would be, added 10 pounds, 7 of it's muscle. I think that's great. I think that's kind of something we've needed from Turner for a while. Is like you want to see him be able to, kind of bang down low with like the Joel Embiid's. I think Embiid's always the name that comes up, and like that's hard. That's an MVP type player. We even heard that Embiid's lost weight. It's like
Yeah.
everyone's all over the place, but I think it's a good idea for Turner. And I think that at this point, let's see if he could be a little bit more physical down low. Could that help as it relates to boxing out? Is that worth an extra rebound or so per game? Sometimes we've seen for the Pacers, one extra rebound can go a long way. And I think that the fact that, hey, year 10, this is where I think Myles is probably going to, these are where players really emphasize taking care of their body because they're not getting any younger. So you got to get smarter. And I think that it's a great move by Turner. And just kind of going back to when you mentioned year 10, wow, crazy. We've seen now this offseason players like Klay Thompson and Karl Anthony Towns have moved on. Those are two of the longest tenured players with one team in the league. Cat from the same draft class as Myles Turner. That means that Turner is really in an elite group, a small group of players that have been with the same team for over 10 years. I mean, off the top of my head, you're talking about like Steph Curry, Draymond Green,
I think
and
he's fourth.
Giannis. Yeah, there's
Oh,
Giannis in
and
2013.
Joel Embiid. So I think he's fifth.
Exactly. You're talking about just 5 players. The other ones have been, all stars, MVPs, won some championships. It's tough to stick with one team. So you got to give Myles Turner his flowers.
Yeah, I think him and Devin Booker are right there in that same draft
Exactly.
class to be
Booker's
the
the other
only
one.
ones to stay. But like he was drafted before Booker, so we'll give
Yeah.
Myles a nod there, right?
Cool. Absolutely.
As the fifth longest, and we'll give Devin six. But did you hear any comments that were made about James Wiseman? I'm curious about this.
I did hear a very little bit. I mean, it seemed like a lot of praise. Seems like this coaching staff believes in James Wiseman. I don't have those quotes off the top of my head, but
Okay.
I mean, still, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean Carlisle just basically said they like his size, right? And like that he fits in here well, and like obviously like this is a young player they want to invest in. But I thought Myles kind of gave the best comments on him, saying that he's been a big fan of James Wiseman since he entered the league. He's got a ton of size, and he just said that he wants to personally work with him and kind of take him under, kind of be a mentor to him and get him ready for his future in the NBA. So I thought that it was really cool, number one, to see Myles like so excited about a young guy that is on this team now that, I mean, this was a third overall pick, right? Or second overall pick. I think it was second overall pick, right? LaMelo was third. So second overall pick in the 2020 draft. This guy has a ton of talent. Like when he walked by me and Tony East and Derek Kramer in the hallway at media day, I mean, this guy is legitimately 7 foot plus. And I know Carlisle talked about his wingspan. Myles talked about his wingspan. Like you can just feel his presence out there on the court with his size. So there's a reason why you were really excited about James Wiseman.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of downplayed it a little bit, but
I'm pumped.
I don't know what his role is going to be, but I definitely will just say this: like, you have to be excited about the potential of what it could be. Like, it's such a low risk to bring in a guy like this, and if the upside's there, like that's really cool. So that to me was really cool. The last thing that I really got from this, with talking to everybody, like obviously McConnell, Nembhard, they talked about their extensions, that they're happy to be here. They wanted to be in Indiana. Like that doesn't surprise me. Obi didn't say too much. I mean, Obi was joking with TJ, so we still got that fun moment there. But I think Carlisle just talking about the opportunity for Jarus Walker once again at the 3 position is a area they want to see him maybe playing more because they want to get bigger defensively. And I thought that was a big sticking point with Carlisle. Is like, we cannot be small. And the teams that were more physical in the playoffs won that game in each series. So I think that it's kind of a point of emphasis from Carlisle to, okay, maybe we can insert Jarace into the lineup a little bit more. I was curious to see how that would play out, but let's kind of transition now because Pacers training camp day 1, Jarus Walker is with that second unit over Ben Sheppard. And I thought to myself, I'm a little bit surprised by this. It is just day 1. Day 2, tomorrow, we could see Ben Sheppard back with that group. They could just be experimenting with lineups as they get stuff ready. But I think that Rick Carlisle really wants to see what Jarace can do, and he had a lot of high praise for him today.
It's pretty refreshing. I think that, while it is every bit surprising, given that Ben Sheppard was such a big part of that, rotation to end the season and the playoffs, everything like that, starting in the conference finals, it's also very exciting. And I think that for Jarus Walker to be, they're really, it seems like they have pushed the chips in big. No, he's a 3 now. That's what he is. That's where we're going to give him that shot. And it just feels like he's going to get a fair shot. But as it relates to Ben Sheppard, we've heard now from Benedict Mathurin and Tyrese Haliburton that they've highlighted that Ben Sheppard's been balling this offseason. So it's not like, hey, what's going on with Ben Sheppard? Should we be expecting a down year? It's, hey, he's getting a lot of praise going into year 2, but it also feels like, hey, so is Jarus Walker. And I think that that's really exciting for, last year's rookie class where it felt like it was a little bit of a mixed bag at times, especially for Jarus Walker, who didn't get to show anywhere near, what his full potential is. But maybe it's just for day 1, like you said. We'll see what happens in day 2. But either way, I really like what Jarace could bring to the table. And I feel like we kind of already have that idea of what Ben Sheppard could bring to the table on a daily basis, given that we've seen it.
Yeah, the ceiling is so much higher for Jarace if he can really hit on everything. But that doesn't take away from Ben Sheppard. And I think his ceiling, he has not reached that yet at all either. So these are 2 young players that, it's kind of funny to think about. But, like, that's a great rookie class if they can really develop.
It could be.
I mean, that could be. I mean, that's almost as dynamic potentially as a Nembhard Mathurin if they pan out. I think Nembhard's kind of proven himself. I think he's number 1 out of those 4. But, like, this is just a really good job and back-to-back drafts by the Pacers to really address this. So good stuff by them. I'm really intrigued by what Jarace can do, and I think that he's saying all the right things. He's in the right headspace, and I talked to Pascal at Media Day about their relationship and kind of Pascal kind of bringing him under his wing and talked about Jarace wanting to take that initiative to, like, hey, when are you going to work out in the morning? I want to be there with you. I want to learn. We saw that video Pascal posted of Jarace and him working out where he's showing him different moves in the post. So I just feel really confident that Jarus Walker is going to pan out to be a key piece of this team moving forward. I don't know if it's going to be this season. I'm still waiting to see what happens because I still believe in Ben Sheppard a lot. And the fact that Tyrese Haliburton, Benedict Mathurin, those kind of guys are giving Shep a lot of praise, it just shows you how deep this team truly is And Carlisle even said it at media day, like we probably have 11 guys that belong in the rotation, but you can't play 11 deep. You just can't do it. So there's going to be injuries, obviously, that happen throughout the year, and somebody's going to get an opportunity. However, how does the person that's maybe the 11th man, how do they handle that come, the regular season when the season starts? Will they have a good attitude about it, or will they be more like McConnell, not happy, but like work your butt off? Because I think there's going to be times where if it's a young guy, they could get down to the dumps. So I'm just hoping that they see how McConnell handled it as a veteran and use that as the example of, okay, I might not be in the rotation right now, but watch me work my way back into it.
This is exactly why you need veterans. If McConnell can say, look, I was out of the rotation and I had a smile on my face and I coached you guys up and said all the right things in this, why can't you do that? And I know that part of that comes with age. Some of the younger guys are definitely going to be very eager to play in specific, like a Jarus Walker. But I think Carlisle also does a really good job of creating competition. And I think that if they had just gone with Ben Shepherd, maybe it's like, oh, all right, well, that's what it is. We're just going to go with, the same type of rotation that we had last year. I expect him to probably switch it up to see who is that starting three with the second unit, for the next day of training camp. But that remains to be seen. But you made a great point of what Carlisle said about there is 11 players that deserve to play. Not realistic. And I just think that, yeah, it's probably going to be closer to 10. Could be maybe probably, honestly, probably 9. But I just think that right now we got to see. We got this team is so talented that every player deserves, for the most part, minutes, and they're going to be hard to come by. But I think that last year we talked about it. Where was Jarus Walker going to find time at the 4 if you bring in Pascal Siakam and Obi Toppin plays in every single game? You got to get crafty. But sadly, and I'm knocking on wood, like you mentioned, injuries do happen. And this was a Pacers team that stayed relatively healthy last year. And I think that if anything is to happen, I feel a lot more confident about this team than plenty other teams out there that do not have such a great second unit. And I think that for now, you want everybody the best way to be ready. You got to stay ready. And I think that this team is going to create friendly competition, but they have the perfect balance of veterans and young players, I think, to be able to level out.
I definitely agree with that. I think bringing James Johnson back with this group is just huge for that veteran leadership. Obviously, McConnell, Myles Turner, Pascal Siakam, they've been around the league for a while. I think is it year 9 for TJ or year 10 for TJ? I can't remember if he's the same as Myles, but I know Pascal's entering year 9, Myles entering year 10. James Johnson's been in the league, I believe, longer than both of them. So
year 9 for McConnell.
Okay, so he's going into year 9. So, but still, like it's been almost a decade for all 3 of those guys that are key pieces of the rotation. And I think we talked about it a little bit with Mathurin yesterday, but just him saying that seeing the team have success in the playoffs without him was a bit of a humbling experience. For him to say that, plus Tyrese say that about Team USA, like, I just think that this group is going to get it, and I think they're going to really try to invest in the person that probably doesn't get in the 10-man rotation. So I think there's going to be less to worry about here with like friction and not being on the same page, but just staying ready, and that's the key. But I want to go back to Mathurin because Mathurin said he had some screenshots to read before he came into training camp day 1. And what do you know, Facci? The Pacers have a one-on-one drill. And who wins it? Who is the king of the court for day 1 of training camp? Tell everybody.
Benedict Mathurin, just textbook Mathurin. You know that it's what he thrives off of. That's why it's like you can't deny his talent because yeah, I do believe you said who's the best one-on-one player. Last year when we had Mathurin on, he said it was him. He's like, oh, beat him. No matter what player he talked about, it just seemed like he beat everybody. So when you hear it with this Pacers roster, I do believe it, but that's why the talent is so special that it's like if we can use that talent in a team type of atmosphere that works best for the overall Indiana Pacers, Pacers are going to be that much better. So it's just awesome to see that, hey, look, he's healthy, he's back, and I thought was also pretty interesting was who came in second.
Yeah, so Rick Carlisle revealed that they did a one-on-one drill today, and he said Benedict Mathurin was our winner, and he defeated Jarus Walker in the finals. And so that was pretty cool to see. Myles Turner finished third in the one-on-one competition. So we'll have to see how that shakes out the rest of the training camp. But I won't be surprised if we come back here the next couple of days and we just keep talking about Benedict Mathurin
I completely agree.
holding on to that belt. Maybe somebody else will take it from him. Maybe Pascal or McConnell will get there and take it away from him. But
Uh,
uh,
he has said McConnell's really tough, though.
yeah,
I think it was last time that we had him on. He was like, McConnell is a tough one-on-one player. So it's actually probably a pretty sneaky pick by you.
yeah, but we'll see what happens. I just think it's good to hear that from Ben. And I saw Dustin Dopirak posted a video of Ben and Quentin Jackson, I believe it was, taking 3-point shots after their closed session when things were open to the media. Mathurin's shot looked good, so that's good to see after the shoulder injury. But let's dive into Jarus Walker a little bit more here, Facci, because I thought it was good that Carlisle mentioned he played with that second unit, and so they looked really good. And I don't know if they won the scrimmage or not, but he really liked it. He said starters looked good too, but he thought that second unit looked really well together. And you have to realize, like, Jarace and Mathurin haven't really played with that group. So while Ijax and Obi and McConnell have the chemistry and the experience from the playoff run, Mathurin and Walker were not a part of that. So I think that's really good to see. But I like what Jarace said afterwards when he was talking about this. Number one, he said he wasn't happy that he finished second. And so they're like, what did you improve on? How did you feel finishing second? He's like, I wanted to be first. So I like that mentality from him. But in terms of his defense, Facci, he said he wants to get better at fighting over screens, being in the right spot, playing the passing lanes and boxing out. Said he has worked hard on not gambling and playing defense more at his feet. So to hear that from him for year two, I think is going to be important for him to stay on the floor.
I think it's really important. Look, it's like everybody might want to be a scorer in this league, but they can't. I think you look at this Pacers team, they got plenty of offense, but who could do the dirty work? And I think that you got to do those little things right. And if Jarus Walker can do all those little things right that you mentioned, he can carve out a consistent role on this team. And I just think that when you talked about not gambling too much, I feel like that was a knock on him last year, where it's like at times he took risks and it was enough to get him pulled. So mistakes are going to happen, but can you limit those mistakes? If so, I think that he can be able to earn some minutes, because we saw, Ben Shepherd felt like someone that was, just kind of pretty reliable last year on defense. He wasn't doing a lot offensively. There's only a handful of games where he did score 10 or more. Those actually happened to be the games that the Pacers won. But it was also just who's going to dive on the floor, who's going to get that 50-50 ball, who's going to make those smart defensive plays, not gamble too much, not put someone, at risk to be able to, let up an easy basket. And I feel like Jarace now probably learned a lot from observing stuff that we could probably never really put into words of how much he's learned. But that man watched a lot of basketball. He played a lot in the G League, and I think that now he probably is coming into year two with a totally different lens that he had coming into year one.
Absolutely. And I think even Tyrese talked about this. He said, I can't relate to a guy like Jarace who didn't get into the rotation as a young player because I've never dealt with that. He said the Team USA experience did kind of let him kind of, shed some light on that. But at the same time, like he said, I still just can't really connect on that level. So it's going to be fun to see how Jarace does evolve into year two. And we've seen with other guys, like Mathurin had some ups and downs in year two. Started out as a starter, went to the bench. Nimhard in year two was the backup point guard, has kidney stones, has all these injuries. You just all these unexpected things. And then let's talk about Isaiah Jackson. Isaiah Jackson, his second year in the league, maybe everybody thought, okay, let's see what he can do as the backup big. And he really never took that with him and kind of solidified himself as the backup center. And then even last year, I think people thought he would be, and he ended up losing that to Jalen Smith for the majority of the season. So it's just, you just never know how things are going to play out. But I do like that Isaiah Jackson is officially locked in there as that backup center. And there is some really cool stuff that he mentioned today in terms of expanding his game. Facci, would you go ahead and let everybody know what Isaiah is hoping to do this year that he maybe didn't do as much last year?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. I mean, he's talking about being able to, expand his jump shot. He's been working with Jenny Busek, and just that he feels more confident in his shot and is shooting it's more smoothly. I think this is everything that we've asked for the last few years. He's going into year four. I think coming out of Kentucky, I remember being like, well, he attempted a couple threes. Maybe that's something he could do. We didn't see it. His rookie year, he attempted 16 threes. Then the second year, 14. Then his third year, just 4 attempts. No one's even asking for him to be a 3-point shooter. We don't need Isaiah Jackson pulling up from three. But could he be, not even to say a threat outside of the paint, but could there be some type of soft touch that is coming from more than just 2 or 3 feet out? I think that that's something that we're hoping he can add to his game, especially in what's essentially a contract year. Is like, can you show growth offensively? I felt like last year he knew who he was. He didn't take much risks at all. He was extremely efficient from the floor, shot 66.5% from the field, but I also felt like he played everything very, very safe and was just kind of a very similar player offensively, I felt like, than what we had seen in the previous years.
I think with the second unit, the way that it is, you need your center maybe to kind of spread the floor a little bit more.
A little bit. Mm-hmm.
Because I think McConnell and Mathurin both like to get into the paint. So if they're going to go into the paint more, does that clog things up with Jackson there compared to a Jalen Smith who can spread the floor, right? I know Jalen Smith really struggled from three that last part of the season, pretty much after the All-Star break. I mean, before he was shooting like, out of this world numbers, but then he ends up kind of like, water found its level, as I always say. And that's what happened to Jalen Smith's 3-point shot. It became non-existent, and it became to the point where he was almost unplayable in the playoffs. And I think part of that, he lost his confidence. And you could just tell Jalen was not shooting the ball with as much confidence as he was in the beginning of the season. So, like you said, Ijax does not need to become like this big stretch three, or stretch big like Myles, right? He doesn't need to be shooting threes at that high of a clip. But if he can add it just to his game to make the defense respect him a little bit more in the pick and pop, it'll open up so much more for his game because he's so dynamic in the pick and roll. Like, this dude can catch lobs like Obi Toppin can. And I'm thinking about this, second unit right now. If you've got Toppin out there with Mathurin and Jarace and McConnell and now Isaiah, do you feel great about anybody else's ability to be more of a catch and shoot 3-point shooter besides Obi Toppin? Like, Mathurin got better at it last year. And I think Jarace, we haven't really seen it yet.
Yeah.
Where Ben Shepherd, we saw it a little bit more, but even at times Ben was not knocking them down, but you still had that threat. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how that all unfolds and how it kind of irons out because there seems to be maybe some potential wrinkles there with the floor space.
I think that's a fair thing. Is like, if Turner goes out and you have Isaiah Jackson in there, your whole style changes completely differently. It definitely does, and you're just not going to get that shooting from James Wiseman. It's going to be something that they have to figure out because you don't have that luxury of Turner and Jalen Smith being as efficient and being as much of a 3-point threats as they were. But I trust the Pacers will figure it out. I think they will be doing more experimenting, and I think that that's going to be something that is a valid question. I think, because imagine if there was this is another knock on wood situation, is if something did happen to Turner, a lot changes very quickly in terms of the spacing on this team, and that is just not something that I even want to start to analyze right now because it could create a big problem for this Pacers team.
All right, Facci, so that's going to wrap it up for the training camp recap part of our show today, but we're going to end things here with a new segment that we're going to try to incorporate to this show. I don't know if it's going to be once a week or once a month. I don't know if Facci's going to be able to make it last if we do it once a week, but I'll be pushing Facci here. We're going to be doing a hot take corner. So we're going to give a basketball and a non-basketball hot take. So since this is my idea, Facci, I had something kind of in my head brewing when I sent this to you for this segment idea. So I'll save that for last. I'm curious, what is your basketball hot take as we come into this?
All right, well, I had a hot take, but it turned out it was just lukewarm, so I had to go back to the drawing board and come up with something just a little bit spicier. So for my hot take, it's the New York Knicks will get bounced in round 1 of the playoffs.
Oh, you believe that too?
I told Alex offline, I said, it's hard for me to say something that I don't believe. So can I find something that there could be some truth to? And I think it could be. This Knicks team on paper right now is the talk of the town. Isn't enough. It's the talk of like the NBA world for this past week or so. Look at what the Knicks did. But remember when we had that same thought about Phoenix last year, When we looked at this, we said, "Oh my God, that looks like they can't be beat." That's they have three star level players on this. Wow, and Phoenix struggled, and when they went down early in the playoffs, I don't think by then people were really surprised. But I think you look at this Knicks roster, the starting five is very good. But now they are out of draft picks. I don't know what they're going to do to add to that bench. Right now, it seems like they're calling up, shopping, Mitchell Robinson. I don't know what you're going to be able to get for a guy who's out for a couple months and can't leave the paint. I just think that right now, this Knicks team, they have a lot of momentum. But I'd be curious to see how does it play out in a stacked Eastern Conference.
That is spicy, Facci. Yeah,
Pretty
not even
spicy.
winning a series. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if they're the 3 seed and I had Milwaukee as the 6 seed for me,
That's what I'm
right?
saying.
Like, yeah, they could lose in the first round. It would not shock me, especially if they're playing a team like Milwaukee, who I have at 6. But I guarantee it's not going to finish out the way that I predicted because it never does. But oh man, my basketball hot take is not nearly as hot as this, Facci.
Oh,
So,
okay.
um, I was going to say it might be a little bit of a hot take, but
You better bring it.
I think this is the year Myles Turner gets more than 7 rebounds in a season. I think he's going to average 8 or more rebounds in a season. That's not super hot, but I
It's not.
feel
He's averaged 7.5 before,
okay.
but
We'll say 9. I think he's going to average 9 rebounds or higher this season. So I,
I
I
love
I
it.
know that I said it last year that I think that was like my season goal for him was 20 and 10, right?
Yeah, I remember that. Almost fell out of my chair. I wanted to believe it, but I just knew. I just
I
knew it was too hot. It was like I had to turn a fan on. I was starting to sweat a little bit. But if he can get to 9, this Pacers team, first of all, he's going to get paid. I mean, if Turner's putting up like 18 and 9, that man's going to get paid because we've seen other centers get paid right now. But I also feel like the Pacers are going to be that much more of a better team for it. The 7 to 7.5 rebounds, it's just not going to cut it anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not super hot. I have other hot takes that I want to say for later, but like
Huh?
since we're talking current things, like I was gonna go back to like old NBA history and give some hot takes on some things today, and I was like, you know what? I can save those for later because it's already happened. Nothing's gonna change. So we'll just stick with the ones that are current. Now, for the non-basketball hot take, I am very curious what you have here.
For mine, I'm just gonna rip the band-aid off and I'm just gonna say it. I don't think a lot of people know how passionate I am about this. And when I say passionate, I mean how much I'm a hater. I think pickles are absolutely disgusting. All right.
Not a
That's
hot
my
take.
hot take. My hot take is pickles are gross. And I'll tell you why. I hate the smell. I hate the texture and I hate the residue that it leaves on your bun when you didn't ask for it. Now the bun's soggy and it's just I don't know how pickles managed to get like grandfathered in with like sandwiches and burgers as like that is just something that comes with your sandwich. And then maybe the worst part, every time I speak up about it and I say, no pickles, my wife goes, just put them on the side. And I'm like, I don't want them even on my plate. And she loves pickles, so I always have them in the fridge. And it's just we gotta pump the brakes on including pickles with everything you order when you go out to eat.
I would agree. I'm not a pickle guy myself, but I'm not to the point where if a pickle is on my sandwich, like I know some people that if they order a sandwich with no pickle and the pickle gets put on the bun, they'll return the sandwich because of the
I
residue
won't
from
go
the
that
pickle.
far.
So you'll eat it regardless. You'll just take the pickle off and eat it.
I'll tell my wife to take the pickle off. I'm
You won't
like,
touch it.
yeah, I'm not touching it. I'm like, yeah, I really, I mean, I despise pickles with a hatred. So I'm like, hey, like, babe, would you mind? And she'll like scrape it off, and then like, at that point, I'm like, all right, maybe like let me put like some ketchup over or something to mask the pickleness. But it's a true story, and I assume he's not listening. But my aunt's husband, not my uncle, but whatever. Anyway, for Christmas now, for the last 2 years, he's given us jars of pickles. And I guess the first time Amy said something about it, and he goes, I know how much you loved them last year, so got you some pickles again. And I'm like, yay! And I'm just like, oh my God. Like
You,
my Christmas gift was a jar of pickles. Like, what are we doing here? But it is what it is.
you were caught in a pickle there for sure.
I that was the proper time to use that.
Yeah.
That's how you are going to be a dad, so you better start just throwing those
Oh,
jokes out there.
I've been working on them, Facci. So I like that hot take. Now I will end things here with my hot take, and it is a massive hot take, and I'm probably going to be in the minority here. Wedding dresses. Let's talk about wedding dresses for a second, okay? I'm sure my wife's not going to listen to this, but like, I think wedding dresses are so overrated.
Oh, big
And
time.
here's what I mean by that. You're supposed to get a wedding dress to look the most beautiful you've ever looked in your life if you're a woman, right? I feel like most women don't look their prettiest in their wedding dress. I think I feel like, and this is a crazy take. I know it's so random.
Ladies, close your ears because you are going to want to fight after this.
But when I look at a woman like in a wedding dress, like sometimes I'm like, man, that wedding dress, like that's not what they would normally wear. Like that's not them.
True.
And so it's like I just don't necessarily think that a girl looks the most beautiful on her wedding day. Like, yeah, she can look beautiful, but is she the most beautiful version of herself in her wedding dress on her wedding day? I would say for the majority of people, no. There are some that can rock it, right? And they have the right dress and things like that. But for some, I've seen them look better not in a wedding dress, which to me, I just feel like wedding dresses, like, unless you're paying like crazy amounts of money for them, I think they're kind of ugly.
Yeah, they can be very expensive for something that you are actually only going to wear once.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, if you pick the wrong dress, and then yeah, it could be a little bit unflattering. Fellas listening to this right now, I would say probably don't have this debate with your wife because you might find yourself on the couch the day that you have this you bring this up with them. But also, it's like for a wedding dress, then you got to hold on to it for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And there's always that time where you offer it to someone else and they don't want it. They
No.
don't want a wedding dress that was from 30 years ago. My mother did that to my wife, and everyone else has done that. So they're trying to pass it along, and it's like, I'm sorry, but that's very outdated, and I'm not interested.
No, I mean, passing down of the wedding dress is just a bit ridiculous to me. I mean, that's something you see on movies and TV shows, but it's like, how realistic is that? So I don't know. All I got to say is like, yes, my wife looked beautiful on our wedding day. There's no doubt about it. And she was obsessed with her dress. She loved it. And I guess I just liked it. I didn't love it. It wasn't like what I envisioned, I guess. I don't know. Maybe like the perception in my head of what I thought she would pick out versus when I saw her for the first time, like it was more of like a, whoa, how do I react to this? Because you know, like when you have that first look, right? It's
Mhm.
supposed to be like this dramatic effect. And we did a first look before the wedding ceremony happened because we took all of our pictures before. But I got more emotional when she walked down the aisle
Oh, of
than I
course.
did at that first look. And I mean, I was just like, you know what? Like, yes, she looks beautiful and I'm so happy I'm marrying her. But at the same time, I'm just like, I've seen her look better, not in her wedding dress. And that's all I wanted to say. And I feel that way, not just about her, but other girls that I've seen that I know. It's like, yes, you look nice in your wedding dress. It's a nice dress. It's a very special occasion. But for guys, it's just easier. Like,
Oh,
you
big
wear
time.
a tux, you wear a suit, whatever, and you can wear that any day of the week and it doesn't feel that odd. So it's just like, I don't know. Maybe this is just a dumb take and it's not a hot take, but I don't know. That's just how I felt today, Fletch.
I think in the comments we're gonna find out. So we will see how that goes. But no, I hear you on that stuff. I think that the walking down the aisle was far more emotional than like a first take. I remember my wife was like, when she got her dress, she was like, "So what do you think I got?" I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "What do you think the wedding dress looked like?" I'm like, "Babe, I couldn't even begin to describe to you what like a wedding dress looks like these days." I'm like, white and long, like
Yeah.
I don't, I can't like paint a picture like that. So she was like, "I mean, you really have no guesses?" I'm like, "I don't think I've like thought about the wedding dress. I think it's more you just think about the wedding day."
Yeah.
But yeah, hey, curious to see what you guys think about these hot takes on a non-basketball standpoint. Let us know. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes we could be listening to the biggest pickle lovers and wedding dress fans out there for all we know. Just let us know. There's no disagreeing. We just want to hear from you.
No, there is disagreeing, and that's okay. You don't have to agree with this, but let's be cordial. I don't know what the right word is here.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah, no, that's definitely
I think that's
appropriate.
right. My friend David will let
Yeah.
me know if it's the wrong word. But anyway, I will just say this. Last thing about wedding dresses, not everybody looks good in white. So, Facci, tell everybody where they can find us at on social media.
You can find us on Twitter at PacersPodSTP. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPodSTP. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, go over to youtube.com/Setting the Pace, a Pacers podcast, where you can check out our latest podcast interview with the one and only Benedict Mathurin. Benedict Mathurin, that interview is up there on YouTube, as well as our conversation with Jeremiah Johnson on Monday morning that took place before Media Day. So hope you guys enjoy all of that. But Facci, if you're ready for day 2 of training camp that we'll be talking about later this week, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!